So very, very good morning, everyone who's here. This is, I think, the third of our 6 sessions on dhyana paramita. It wasn't the plan at the beginning of this year to go through all 6 paramitas, but it ended up that way. So we're on paramita number 5, and we're getting to halfway through. And then for those of you joining us on YouTube, then good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and a very warm welcome. So let's start as we must do. Remember, especially in context, always put things in context. These 6 paramitas are the way we sum up a bodhisattva's practice. There's the bodhisattva's motivation or aspiration, which is the wish, but then just the wish won't make us Buddhas. It's a lovely wish, beautiful motivation, but it's like the wish to build a house. If you just sit there wishing, the bricks won't go up, the foundation won't go down, the roof won't go on the top. So we're in the context of bodhicitta, the bodhisattva's way, and all of that depends on motivation. When the motivation's there, then whatever there is of the practice, the 6 paramitas, is the bodhisattva's path. When the motivation's not behind it, you can be doing the same things, but if the motivation's not there, it's not part of your journey to enlightenment. A good journey to a nicer samsara, but the bodhisattva's whole point is a journey to enlightenment. So we know this from all the other teachings, and this is why we make this very special effort at the beginning to really mean these words of prayer with which we start. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment on until we reach the very heart of enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and all 6 transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening in every enlightened quality, to be able to truly help sentient beings so lost in samsara. May each and every being be well, live long, be healthy, and be well provided for. Have good friends, find respect, live in places of peace and plenty. Most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for those good things to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from suffering and from creating causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural, a sacred well-being that's totally beyond suffering, and attain great equanimity, free of closeness or distance from anyone. Deyata shame shamavati shameta shatru am kori marajite karota keore tejovati Olloyane bishudane male malapanaye kukure kaka grase grasana omuke paramuke amuke shammedawane sawa graha bandhanane nigri hitva sawa bhava prabhadina vimukta marapasha savitva buddha mudra anudgatita sawa mare butsarita parishude Viga Shantu Sava Marakama. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above our heads on lotus and moon seat, through your immense kindness, ever sustain us that the accomplishments of body, speech, and mind flow from you, and we are one. Thank you. So, where are we so far? We've had 2 sessions, partly exploring the chapter that I sent you, the document I sent you as a support document based on Gampopa's teachings on the paramita of meditation. A lot of context. We started with the main point of what are we doing with meditation in general, all of our meditations, on the cushion, off the cushion, everything we call meditation. I introduced you to the Tibetan term. I wonder if you can remember it. Gom, yes. And so Gom means familiarizing oneself, creating new habits. And so in general, we realize that we are creatures of habit, many levels of habit, some deeply rooted, many of them unwanted, and also habits in not so much in the usual English language meaning of the word habit, but let's say tendencies from past lives. So these are things which can come up. Then habits, we kind of think of, they develop from when we're children, we grow up. As you get older in this life, you develop habits. Tendencies can only really manifest when they're triggered. So if the triggers aren't there in your childhood, in your early life, they can come along much later. And then sometimes the old stories from past lives will emerge. That's quite interesting. So in general, we have these habits, these tendencies. We are creatures of habit, and every day what we do is feeding or starving our various habits. So we're in constant evolution. It's wonderful. It's one of the natural ways we can understand we don't have a fixed self. We're a changing story. So the whole point of Gom is how can we act upon ourselves wisely, kindly, lovingly, caringly, so that the habits we are are the ones we want. And the habits that we have, or that we don't want, we can diminish and get rid of. So Gom is all about training, because training is quite a good word. How can we train ourselves into new habits? It's nice in French, there's a verb, traîner. Traîner means pull along. And probably that's where the word train comes from, because a train pulls along carriages. So how can we pull ourselves into the right direction? So meditation, Gom, the big sense is on the cushion, off the cushion, and so on. And in this course, we're looking more specifically not at all the ways we can train our mind, but we're looking at dhyana. So if we have a big general context, dhyana means focus. How can we use the power of focus, concentration, if you like, to help change who we are, to help modify our habits? And also, if you remember, in the very beginning of Gampopa's talk, there's this vivid image. What's wrong if we don't have dhyana, if we don't have focus? And then it says, what's wrong is that you live within the jaws of the defilement. Oh, I should have kept it. Yesterday, I saw a little clip on online, and it was there were bars. I don't know what it was. I don't think it was a zoo. I think it was like safety, security bars on somebody's property in Africa. But there was a hippopotamus on the other side. And so somebody had taken this photo, the film, short film. It starts with the hippopotamus's jaws like this. And somebody throws in a huge piece of fruit, which goes right in the mouth, and then these huge jaws shut around it. So it says, without focus, without the ability to hold, to place, to keep, to hold our mind where we want it, then we live between the jaws of the defilements. They can get us. Snap. Anger, jealousy, lust, ignorance. And they do get us again and again, and they cause damage. We hurt ourselves, we hurt each other. So this is the reason that we are practicing meditation, and in particular, we are learning to focus, and we saw the definition of that, which I just said, to hold the mind where we want it, one-pointedly, in virtue. That's a very important definition. You should know it by heart. To hold the mind one-pointedly where we want it, in virtue. So we went through that at some length. And then we saw, when we got into more detail, that the process of dhyana, of focus, means, it says, isolating the body and isolating the mind. And the word isolating, which we explored last time, means transcending, getting away from, rising above, all of those things. We need not to be in the stream of habit anymore. We need to get out. It's like these days, if you wear a tin hat and an EMF-proof blanket over you, so that the 5G and the 6G and all the other Gs and all of the electromagnetic radiations don't do your head in, then you know this is isolation. It's there. What can you do so that it's not poisoning you, that it's not affecting you? What can you do? Or it's like in an ideal medical world, as it's supposed to be. I don't know about the real world, but vaccination, where the bugs are all there and you are protected. Well, maybe we are, maybe we aren't. But the idea is a good idea. The stuff's there. How can we be safe? How can we no longer be afflicted? They're called the afflictions. Well, if they don't get you, then they're not afflictions anymore, are they? If they don't if you're not poisoned, they're not poisons anymore. So we looked at that a little bit with the peacock, you remember. You can avoid the poisonous plants, or you can change them into medicine, or you can thrive on them. So we need the ability to hold our mind where we want it. We need to isolate the body. So last time we saw this means when we can retreat. Group retreat, ideally, in the longer term, once we're ready, strong enough, solitary retreat. because there it's very clear. You're in retreat. It's just you and your mind. And your mind and you. And there's nobody else and there's nothing else. You can't blame anyone or anything. What's going on in there? That's you. And that's, remember the very beginning about Gom, when I was explaining it, about becoming. It's what we've become. Through all sorts of reasons, but that's who we are. So we need to get ourselves out of busy circumstances, because there, who we are gets confused with all the other people around us and the material situation and society and all that kind of stuff. We need, so it's just like a car. When the car goes wrong, you need to put it in the garage. You can't fix it as you're going down the motorway. I think that might be quite dangerous or quite impossible. You need to put it in the garage. Sometimes you need to jack it up onto a ramp so you can look underneath. You need specialized tools. You need the knowledge to get in there and fix it. So it's very much like putting your life in the garage, going to retreat. You're going to have a good look under the bonnet and sort it out. So that's where we got to last time, and getting yourself physically away, literally, into helpful circumstances. So in the long term, we want to be able to be at peace in all of the senses of be at peace wherever we are. And what was it called? I remember about 30 years ago, there was I think he was Korean professor of cinematography. He made a long film, Korean, Vietnamese, I can't remember. But it was, I think, 4.5 hours based on the ox herding Zen pictures. You know, there's the 9 stages. And it's a very slow film. I mean, you need a lot of patience. He doesn't rush into it. There's a lot of scenery, and he goes up this beautiful mountain, lovely forests. There's your very stereotyped, tiny Japanese monastery, and it's almost empty. It's run down. There's maybe a couple of monks. There's one old master in there. And so then he studies, and the master puts him through shamatha and dhyana training, and gradually his level of understanding goes through these different levels that we'll see in this course and that we see in the ox herding pictures. And so at the very end, he's quite realized, and he's sitting in the middle of a very busy town. There's traffic, there's little 3-wheeler scooters, a lot of pollution, noise, animals, chickens, humans, and he's totally at peace. So he goes back to his master. He said, well, you can do this anywhere. He said, what's all this stuff with pretty old monasteries set on mountainsides and old masters with whiskers and so on? He says, you know, why that? And the master says, if there wasn't all of this and people like me, idiots like you wouldn't find us, wouldn't know where to go. He said, if we were in the cities, it just looked ordinary. So anyway, it was an interesting film. We had lots of time to get up and have a cup of tea and a biscuit as it was going on. But so going to retreat is a very, very helpful, perhaps very necessary step where we extricate ourselves and we are alone with ourselves so that we can, I suppose, really, you know, in one way, learn to love ourselves. Love meaning acceptance. We accept ourselves because there's no choice. I mean, it's the wise choice. When we see through Dharma how much it takes to change ourselves, to change one habit, to move in the direction we want to go, then sometimes there are quantum leaps, there are big experiences, there are breakthroughs and so on. But generally, the way to love oneself is to accept oneself. And of course, that's echoed a lot these days. As Pema Chodron says, start where you are. Always makes me laugh. How could you start somewhere else? Start with who you're not. Start with, I mean, if it's your path, start by being Ken Holmes. You can't. So, I mean, of course, we logically, we have to start where we are. But that's the point I think she's making. We need to accept ourselves, our story, our karma, everything that happened, because there's no way we can change it. It happened. It's history. All of that and lifetimes of it made us who we are now. So accepting it's important. And then having a good look at it. This is like lifting up the bonnet on the car and working out what is wrong. What is wrong? Have to actually see. So I'm waffling a bit. I always feel at the beginning of time, I've got time to waffle and bring some points across. There used to be a joke, if I can remember it, about the 4 people in a car and the car breaks down, doesn't work. So the electrical engineer said, I think it must be the spark plugs or the battery. And we should get that changed. There's a chemist, and he said, no, I think it's the carburetor. I think there must be some dirt in the fuel. And there's another one, probably a mechanical engineer, says, no, I don't think it's that, it's this. And then the 4th one's a Microsoft engineer. He says, I think we should all just get out, close the doors, and then get back in again, and maybe it will work. So if you've ever had to shut down your computer and restart, you'll see it's a funny joke. But the point is, they've all got their first thought, their first reaction based on their own conditioning. And what you're going to have to do is actually lift up the bonnet or do whatever needs doing to find out, is it the electrics? Is it the fuel system? Is it this? Is it that? Whatever's really there, that's what you need to fix. Or maybe it is just a question of getting out and getting back in again. But whatever is really wrong needs really fixing. So today we go to the classical way in these teachings about dhyana paramita of when you go to retreat, then, and we did this last time at the end, but you have to really stop first and think, why am I here? What's the point? It's precious time. It's a very rare and precious thing to get retreat time. I don't want to waste it. And so how might one waste retreat time? There's the grass is greener side. When we're out of retreat, we dream of being in an ideal place where we can just practice. And then when we get into retreat, we start thinking of the outside and people and cakes or whatever it is. Sceneries, things. The mind, your body's in retreat, but your mind's on the outside. But then all the other things which are part of practice, like in that Zen film, the monastery, the master, the Zen practices and so on. Why are they there? We need the path, we need the practices so that we can go beyond them all. Beyond practice, we need them. They're there, but we mustn't get lost in them. So that's why there are all these, if you remember from last time, the animal analogies. Okay, you can do yogic exercises, you can Buddhist meditation, yogic exercises, yoga, tai chi, all those things, so your body feels very harmonious, very fluid, wonderful feeling. But then it says, the monkeys, they do those much better than you. You'll never be as good as a monkey at those. Then bears can go bye-bye for 3 months. So our mind can go into deep absorption. Bye-bye. Senses. Hello. Dhyana. But you'll never do it as well as the bears. And then parrots can repeat things. I saw 2 days ago a film of a budgerigar. It knows 133 phrases, and its pronunciation is just amazing. It's like an actor. It emphasizes the right words. It repeats exactly as it heard them, the different phrases. 130 phrases. Maybe that budgerigar knows more English phrases than we know Tibetan prayers. So prayers are part of our practice in retreat, but they are part of the practice, and we're not just there to repeat them. And if you've been a few years in Buddhist practices, you know, once you know the prayers, you can spend time saying prayers, saying mantras, but your mind's wandering somewhere else. You can be very good at, they call it double employment. You're sitting there going, Sonrichodan Sojichonamna, but you're really thinking about your shopping. Because the prayer has become automatic. So it says, like parrots and minor birds and so on. So there are all these aspects to a day's practice. We are not there for that. They're part of it, but we're not to waste our time, I think is the word in them. Remember when we did diligence paramita, it was about not wasting your time, being effective. So when we're in retreat, then the point here is a focus and using your body, speech, and mind efficiently. So that's a general guideline. It's usually something we do every day. Beginning of the day, end of the day, beginning of the day. We think today I'm in this wonderful, blessed opportunity of retreat. I'm not going to waste my body in useless activities, my speech and my mental speech in useless activities, or my mind into useless things. It's focus. Every precious minute focused on making my mind a better mind. So then it says, classically, through our own mindfulness up to then, and our dialogue with our teacher, we should be aware, by the time we've gone to retreat, of what our main mind poison is. So 5 main poisons. Desire attachment, 1. Anger, hostility, 2. Jealousy, 3. Pride, 4. Ignorance, 5. And it says, whichever one is the greatest, we should spend special time on that at first, because that's our greatest poison. That's our most powerful habit that could become our biggest problem later on. It could stand in the way of our progress. In fact, it already stands in the way of our progress simply by being the biggest mind poisons. Mind poisons are like, what did I see? I see lots of things online, as you gather. But yesterday there was an article, I think on the BBC, about pollution. Oh no, it was a photographer. It's a photographer who's taken pictures in New Delhi, or Delhi, of the same, exactly the same cadrage, same frame, but when there is pollution or when there isn't. It's amazing. Some of them is just almost all grey with you just see a few things. And then on the days when there isn't pollution, you see parks and buildings and right into the distance. So just now, our habits of the mind, poisons, are gumming up the works. They are blocking, they are restricting who we are, what we can do. And the biggest poison is restricting the most. So it's got to go, and because it's the biggest obstacle, then it's what we need to focus on. But also in a longer term perspective, if we bury the most powerful mind poison and we start becoming a Buddhist and a good Buddhist and doing practice and doing Ngondro and doing all whatever we're doing, but suppressing, then when it comes back, it can be, when in the end you can't suppress it anymore. And all of that's an interesting story we don't have time for today, but how our Dharma path forces karma to come to maturity and our mind poisons to come up to the surface to be dealt with. They have to. They have to, otherwise we can't move on. They have to come up. So they can come up very powerfully. So it's better to work on them, to acknowledge them from the outset. So it says, find your strongest poison and then do the appropriate meditation that is the antidote to the poison. It's very straightforward. In the past, it was very straightforward. You had a teacher, a Dharma teacher, you went to retreat, the teacher says, told you, you're a very angry person, Ken. And so when you're in there, you need to work on the anger with the antidote, loving kindness meditation. Straightforward. These days, not so easy. We have Dharma information overload, and you've got everything online, all the methods, Mahamudra, Dzogchen, advice from great masters, and if there's anger, oh no, just let it be, anger's your friend. Anger could be transformed into this and that wisdom, you're a yogi. And so with those teachings available, then there is I was thinking of it yesterday, a phrase that Taisitupa coined, unidentified flying ego. So unidentified flying ego can use Dharma to its own ends. So instead of Dharma being there to get rid of ego, Dharma becomes there to reinforce your ego in all sorts of ways. So here we are looking at something very simple, very straightforward. It's not the Vajrayana level, the peacock instant transformation into Buddha mind, into deity, into pointing out nature of mind. We're not talking about that. We're talking about Mahayana Buddhism, a bodhisattva who wants a lovely pure mind, who's working on their poisons very practically. So we learn the 5 remedies. There isn't really an order. We could start anywhere, but the order we get them in the text is we start with desire, attachment, lust, and the text particularly focuses on physical desire. And now this is interesting. See, here you've gone to retreat, but if this is your main poison, you're already allowed a holiday from your retreat cell because you have to go and look at corpses. And so this was a classical meditation. I don't know how much Buddhist literature or teachings you've been around, but stuff with, how can you say, blood and corpses and that kind of thing is usually associated with the Vajrayana imagery. But in the past, this meditation was throughout Buddhism, and particularly practiced in the Theravada system, in the Shravaka level of meditation. And corpses were much more readily available in the past. It's harder to get hold of a corpse these days, or to be able to see one. Death is very much screened off from us. People, to be able to see death, to be able to see a dead body is a privilege these days. It's a powerful experience that are screened from people. I know parents, I've heard, have very strong debates with each other about when somebody in the family dies, do we let the children see the corpse or not? And some say, no, they're just kiddies. They need to be in their world. It's a happy world. They'll have plenty of time to come across all of that later. Others say it will be healthier and wiser for them to grow up seeing life as it is. And so do we take them in to see grandma's body, or don't we? It's interesting. So anyway, it was easier to see corpses. And I remember not that long ago, 1980s, when I was in Nepal, lots of people couldn't afford to bury family members who died, so they carry the body at night time and just dump it by a roadside somewhere. So they didn't have the responsibility of, they couldn't afford a cremation, the wood, they couldn't bury it, so they just dump it somewhere. So quite often you could see dead bodies. So the idea is that you go to what they call charnel grounds, which were just places where dead bodies were left for the animals, for the vultures, for foxes, other animals, to eat them, to get some benefit. And so there you sit and meditate, as close as you can get without throwing up, because they're quite smelly. And you look at the freshly dead ones, and you watch the color change as the days go by and how they get sort of grayer and blacker. You start to see some of the worms and maggots on them. You see them when bits and pieces are missing because they've been eaten away by the crows or the vultures. And this is the point. You don't force think. You don't try and put ideas into your head. You sit there quietly and you give it enough time to draw conclusions. You draw your own conclusions is best. So we're not trying to brainwash ourselves. We're trying to get perspective. Just now, so I have to use words because I don't think any of you are going out tomorrow to sit in a charnel ground and give yourself a couple of weeks studying corpses. It's not going to happen. But we can get the point of this meditation to help us to reflect in a helpful way. Is just now we're alive and we're embodied. I know it's obvious. I know you've got a body. You don't need Ken Holmes to tell you you've got a body. and that you're in a body, but we've got very, very used to being in this body. I mean, we've been in it since conception, let alone since birth. It's totally familiar, and it's more or less all we know. Unless you have spiritual experiences, cosmic experiences, and other stuff, all you've ever known is what these eyes have seen, what these ears have heard, what this tongue has tasted, what this nose has smelt, and what your nerve endings have felt as sensations of hot, cold, pleasure, pain, and so on. That's our habit. Now, it's a prison. Let's take a prison as an example. Just now, you're free. I don't think anyone's watching this from a prison cell, although maybe on YouTube, who knows, maybe. But you're free. You can walk around. You can go where you want. You can go into the kitchen, cook what you want. And you can meet the people you want to meet. If you get put in prison, you're in a cell. These days, probably in a cell with 1, 2, 3 other people. There's a cell, there's a toilet in the corner. You get given the food that's been cooked for everybody. Your life's very limited. Maybe you've got a TV, but it's kind of limited. Probably your cellmates are all fighting about which program to watch. So you're going to have to watch stuff you don't want to. Imagine the difference being in prison and then coming out, where you can go walk in the woods. You can go cook yourself, whatever you want. You can go and see your friends, your family, sleep when you want. Such a difference. So this body, since we were conceived, has been both the most precious gift. This is the Mahayana way of looking at it, a precious human possibility, but it's also a limitation. It's a limitation. And so as you sit looking in the cemetery at the rotting bodies, where those journeys are over, but that was a person with a life and doing all the things humans do. Why? Because of what we see. Now here we're dealing with desire and attachment. So why do we desire things? And then that comes first, and then get attached to them. I suppose that comes first. But anyway, why? Because they're nice. Or pleasant. What does pleasant, nice mean? It means these 5 senses. Can you think of anything else that's nice? Normally, in everyday life, beyond the senses, what would it be? And even if it's a nice idea, a fantasy, it's based on your senses from past experience. Like, it can feel nice if you like that sort of thing. Think of a tropical beach and beautiful warm seas and lovely food like you get on like a holiday somewhere in Thailand or Bali, something like that. If you think of it, you can only think of it because your eyes have seen blue and green seas, white sand beaches. It's because you've tasted this type of curry or that type of thing. We want, because these senses of experience, we're in a body. And then when some experience is nice, then we want it again. We get attached to it. We get scared of losing it, and so on. And so this leads to reflection. This is the point of what would come out naturally without Ken Holmes talking or without putting ideas in your head, is what does it mean that this mind of mine, this Buddha mind, this endless, limitless, kind, wonderful mind of Buddha has been squeezed into this prison of a 5 sense body, 5 aggregate body, and has grown up. So it's grown up like the monkeys, like the birds, like all the other animals. It's grown up needing food. It's grown up needing companionship. It's grown up with hormones. It's grown up being able to be cold, too cold, and needing shelter, hungry, all those things. And so we see attachment, and then through the Buddha's teaching, of course, we know how through attachment, then we've got into trouble, and we've caused trouble, and we've harmed others. And of all the forms of desire and attachment, usually in the scriptures, then sexual desire, sexual attachment is the strongest. And so that's one meditation, is looking at the corpses. There's another one, now this is one I've done, I've got experience of. It's called skeleton meditation. And it's a bit like, I call it these days maybe osteopath's meditation. And it's where you become familiar with the different bones in the body, the skeleton. And why I call it osteopath is because I've known a few osteopaths, and when they look at somebody, even though of course they see, well, mainly we see clothes when we look at somebody, don't we? But they don't see the clothes by the way they stand, the way they walk, the way they hold their body. They're seeing your skeleton, or they're deducing your skeleton. They see you've got one leg a bit longer than the other, so you walk a bit one-sidedly, and then your hips are not quite balanced, and then because of that, and you end up with headaches or neck problems, when the problem is, even though your neck's wrong, the problem is your leg's too long, or something like this, one leg's longer than the other. So seeing with osteopath's eyes, or people who do Alexander technique for posture and so on, is very skeleton based. So there's an old Buddhist meditation where you observe people as skeletons. When you do it long enough, the amazing thing is you start seeing skeletons. As you see people walking down the street, sometimes you're seeing skeletons walking down the street. It shows us how conditioned our mind is. And having had the experience, I can tell you, it's quite shocking in the real sense. If it's a shock when you're sitting in a shrine room with a whole bunch of skeletons. So I had that when I was training early on with Goenkaji in India, and had the skeleton experience, but it was a classical meditation. So if you don't mind still being in Ken's funny world of all my own references, which come from the old days before we had political correctness or any of this stuff. So it's easier in a way. But it's what I call the building site vision. So I'm remembering building sites when I was a kid. There were lots of them because London was being rebuilt after the Blitz. So you'd have builders on scaffolding and in heterosexual builders, and then young ladies would walk by and they would call out. It was, oh, kind of, look at that. And sort of one builder to another. And sometimes they'd whistle, sometimes they'd shout out. I had a friend, Rick, in 1968, I think it was. He was an actor. He was quite a well-known actor, but he didn't get enough money acting. So he worked on the dust carts early in the morning, and he practiced his voice training with the noise hanging onto the back of the dust cart, going, "Oh, hello, darling, and see you later on today," and that kind of thing. So very politically incorrect and all of that. But what's the point? The builders amongst themselves were systematically undressing the ladies that they watched. They weren't seeing clothes. They were imagining, that's really what we're talking about, a naked body, and beyond, what they were going to do with that naked body. A person they didn't know, somebody passing in the street, but not really and truly what your eyes see, but what through conditioning, what through habit, your mind associates with what your eyes see. So like the osteopath sees the skeleton and the way somebody stands. The building site people were seeing naked ladies. If they were gay, I suppose naked men, doesn't really make any difference. And they were fantasizing. So one becomes aware of that. And impermanence and aging and how a young body, which is attractive in regular worldly terms, gets older and older and older and dies, and then becomes a corpse, and then becomes a rather stinky corpse, and then an even more rotten corpse. Story over, mind gone on to another life. So while that wonderful Buddha mind was confined in this prison of a five aggregate existence, with the five senses, then what became of it? What did that mind learn? What virtue came in? What non-virtue came in? What damage, what karma was done? What good karma was done? And how much of that is related to a desire and attachment, whether it's for food, whether it's for material comfort in a home, furniture and furnishings and garden and beauty for the eyes, whether you spend your life cooking, mad about food, and so on, or sex, or whatever the desire and attachment is, then through looking at the corpse, where it all ends up, this life. And then what we do because of this body should come out naturally. I've had to talk about it, but through the skeleton meditation or the corpse meditation, and there's one more, which is about the 36 impurities in your body. Now there's a list in the backup document. I think I need to go through it, not for the sake of medical knowledge, but just so you know. Okay, ready? Hair, facial hair, teeth, fingernails, toenails, excrement, urine, sweat, nasal mucus, tears, saliva, various discharges from the eyes, ears, and teeth, such as tooth plaque, skin, flesh, blood, bones, body fat, marrow, nerves, tendons, lungs, heart, liver, spleen, kidneys, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, colon, urinary bladder, all the various oils and fats in the body, lymph, pus, phlegm, bile, brain itself, and brain fluid. So we learn to look on each other as a skin bag full of those things. So when we look at other human beings, we don't just do the builder's sight, like, oh, but kidneys going by and a urinary bladder in there, and then brain fluid and snot inside the nose, and then lymph fluid all over the body, and then down the tail end, which is very often interesting for people. It's also the place the shit comes out and the pee comes out, and so on. We think of everything that's there, not just the one selected bit which is fantasized or imagined or overemphasized. And then we can, you can have fun with that in a way, although the actual topic is very serious, because all over the planet, desire, physical desire, sexual desire is doing a lot of trouble in many ways. So you can have fun. You can say, yes, I know, she's medical. She's got kidneys and livers and all of that inside, but her skin's so beautiful. Say, okay, let's skin her. Here's the skin. You can have it. Oh, no, but her eyes. Okay. Here you are. You can put them on your shrine, the eyeballs. And it's kind of a deconstruction. The whole point is to counterbalance. All these meditations are counterbalance. You've gone too much this way, so you can counterbalance this way. You think, wow, that's attractive. Yeah, but that's disgusting. If it's like body fluids and things like this. So it's bringing back some balance, having intelligence, and then thinking about all of it, the whole process of desire and attachment and what it involves. Like if you're involved with food, everything, buying the right ingredients, making sure they're fresh, cooking it the right way. You've got guests for dinner, and then when it's cooked, was it okay? That was a bit too sweet. That wasn't a bit too much like that. What would they think about it? And then everything from beginning to end, from purchasing, cooking, washing up, the stress, the worry, and then with human relationships, all the stress we cause each other inside. Families, family attachment, brothers, sisters, parents, children, lovers. So much tension, so much worry, so many tears. So it comes with a price. If you're willing to pay the price, then, well, that's what we mean by samsara. Yep. But if we are on a Dharma path, then we do those meditations to deal with it. So anyway, I spent a bit more time on this one, attachment, desire, because from what Dharma teachers like myself have seen, it's not the favorite topic. Dharmacharya said, lots and lots of people come and ask me, how can I deal with my anger? She said, not many people want to deal with their desire and their attachment, because, now this is perhaps even more the point. There's a feeling of, I'm going to lose something through being a Buddhist. Okay, I'm going to become a lovely person, a bodhisattva, going to help the whole universe, but blast. Those things are so nice. So there's a feeling of loss. What is it? This is really the point, because Doesn't matter what sort of desire it is or attachment. So anyway, if that's the main mind poison, then there is the remedy. It's called meditation on the unpleasant. 36 qualities, what a body becomes, your own body, other people's bodies, skeleton meditation. They are the big classics. Then the second thing is if anger and hostility and all of the different subsections we looked at in the paramita of forbearance, frustration, just feeling constant, unwell, dissatisfied, at odds, not in harmony with things, but resentful. Self-pity as well. Self-pity is a form of anger. It doesn't sound like it at first. When we think of anger, we think of sort of rage, upset, but the core meaning is there's someone or something there or that's happened and we don't feel good about it. Attachment, we feel good about it, we want it, we want to keep it, whatever it is. Anger is, rather it wasn't there, we want to get rid of it, we resent it. So self-pity is also part of it. We resent what happened in our story and so on. So if that is our strongest mind poison, people can hate themselves. It doesn't have to be hating somebody else. I remember lots of lamas just couldn't get their head around this, that people can hate themselves. I remember the first years Taisitupa came to Samiling and people came to him and he said in public, he said to me in private, he said, how can people hate themselves? He said, I can understand you hate somebody else because they're not nice to you or you don't like what they're doing. How can you hate yourself? He couldn't get it. He couldn't believe it. It's alien to much of Tibetan mentality and certainly to his mentality. But then he saw again and again people genuinely coming to him saying, I hate myself. So anyway, this tense feeling, this upsetness, upset is the key word, anger, troubled. You are troubled. Something, someone troubles you. Your mind is not at peace. That's the main problem. Then we need to replace that upsetness, that anger with love. So today is not complete instruction on loving kindness, metta meditation, which is what we're talking about. That comes in its own time, in its own place. And actually, it should have come before we studied the paramitas. In the build-up to the bodhisattva vow, the bodhisattva path, then we have to learn and gain some skill in loving kindness meditation, compassion meditation. It's the preliminaries for the bodhisattva journey. So here, specifically, it becomes a focus. We're talking about focuses for, as an anger, for resent and upset. And so the way we do that, so this is not instruction, it's just outlining the process in general, is by finding someone we love or have loved as a trigger for giving rise to the feeling of love in our heart. So for Tibetans and in the classic literature, it's very often your mother, because she's been so kind to you. They say the main source of love, the best, truest, most powerful source of love is gratitude, is appreciation. When somebody's been so kind to us, helped us so much, then when we think of them, what they say, your heart melts. It's a shame it got frozen in the first place. But anyway, your heart melts. We feel soft and kind. And this is the key thought. Something inside you wishes you could repay that kindness. You think, gosh, if only I could do something to make their life good. Feeling of gratitude, a feeling of care for that person. And of course, this is what happens when we love somebody and we want to make life nice for them. We want to make life good. And why? Because we're aware of them. So when we explore love, the beginning of love is awareness. Our ego, which is very self-centered, opens a little window into somebody else's life. Maybe it's your baby, your child. And that being becomes more real than the landscape of beings we meet day after day. You know, we keep ourselves at a distance from each other. We've got a lot of self-preservation mechanisms. We only get so close to each other. When there's love, we allow more closeness. We allow ourselves to become aware of other. And then once you become aware of other, they become real. And there's a kind of automatic feeling through the awareness of the other and their life and the details of their life to make it nice. Do what you can. So when people fall in love, they take nice things, flowers, box of chocolates, come and have a meal in a nice restaurant, and nice. So we find to think of, because you're in retreat, you can't go and bring in somebody from the outside. You think of somebody that you really care for. When you think of them, your heart opens up. You feel the warmth. You do anything for that person, actually. When there's really love, you die for them. You give everything you had to make them happy. That kind of feeling. So in this meditation, it depends on the fact that there's been somebody in your life who fits that description. And I know when teaching this in Samiling Shrine Room, teaching the actual method of loving kindness in more depth, sometimes people have said, this is hard for me. I've never loved anybody. And I don't know what to say. If you've never had the feeling, you can't describe it through metaphor or through like this. It doesn't work. Love is love when your heart really cares for somebody. So in the classic texts, it's your old mother who gave you this work, this life, who when you were what Gampopa calls a useless wriggling worm, you couldn't feed yourself, you couldn't protect yourself. You were completely powerless and helpless. Somebody fed you every day, somebody clothed you, they cleaned you. They gave you basic skills, taught you how to eat, how to dress, how to tie your shoelaces, taught you how to speak, how to say mummy, daddy, food, whatever. They taught you language, all these basic things we rely on. Where did they come from? Things we're so grateful for. Me, talking. My job here, talking. Who taught me to talk? Wasn't school teachers. It all started mainly with my mother. But the funny thing is, until about the age of 3, we don't remember a thing. All that kindness we don't remember. The memory's gone. But it's so much. Fed you from her own body. major with her own body, no matter what that meant, whatever discomfort, pain, and so on, gave birth to you, fed you, and went through lots of sleepless nights and all the rest of it. We don't remember a thing, so we think about that. And so often it's the mother that we feel, gosh, so much, nobody's given me that much in my whole life. Nobody. And then often by the time we get to become Buddhists and think like that, the mother's dead already or gone. And then we feel very, very, very grateful. Something very pure, very kind, love. We feel love, gratitude. So that's like I mentioned last time, the old way of making a fire, where you get a spark and then smoke and you fan it and you fan it. So once we find the feeling of love, we stay in it, we make it stronger. We let it flow. That in itself is a wonderful thing. And we think again and again of the kindness of the mother or the kindness of the person who helped you the most. Like in my life, I don't remember those early kindnesses of my mother. I had a very good mother. But when I was in my early 20s, I had one friend. I didn't have any money. He paid for me to go with him to India, introduced me to the Tibetans, and later on, it was through him I went to Samiling, I met my guru, and so on. So much of what my life became was totally thanks to him, totally. And he did it with such kindness. Unfortunately, he died in his mid-30s, just a few years after our Indian adventures together, Samiling. He had a brain tumor. So my gratitude to him, every time I think, I could have tears easily. So kind to me. I owe him so much. So once you get that flowing for somebody you really care for, and it's that authentic feeling of love and gratitude, then we extend it to somebody we almost care for as much, we can love easily, and we share it with those, and then more and more, but we need to keep the feeling going. So loving kindness meditation, metta, can be easy. Everyone, I think, has done it. You sit down in a shrine room and now we do loving kindness for all sentient beings, and then we'll love everybody. But that natural feeling from the heart chakra, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. We need to find that and keep it alive. This is a huge training. And then share it with more and more until we think, but that person who lives 5 houses down the road that you see from time to time, they're just as real as the person I love the most. They're a whole life. They're as important for the people around them as this person is for me. And we learn to feel it for them. And then, so this takes time, but it really happens if you do the meditation. If you don't do the meditation, it would never happen. And then we need to then go to those who've hurt us, those who caused problems in our lives, brought us pain, the ones we resent, we feel angry about, upset about. And we want to love them the same for all the bodhisattva reasons. That's not for today, we've done them many times before. Past mothers, future Buddhas, and so on and so on. So loving kindness meditation is the remedy for anger. When it's jealousy that's the main problem, then we do what is called rejoicing meditation. And it is serious. So if jealousy is now it's your number one problem, then and we see the damage it's caused us, it's caused others, then we think how that person we are jealous of. What jealousy means is they've got something and you don't like it. That they've got success, that they've got better intelligence, they've got more friends. Maybe they've got the friend, the boyfriend, girlfriend that you would have liked to have been your boyfriend, girlfriend. Where they have something which is their skill, their happiness, and the fact that they've got something which is good for them makes you feel bad. We have to be clear about the anatomy of jealousy. Somebody has, you don't have, otherwise you wouldn't feel jealous. There wouldn't be a problem. You don't have, they have, you feel bad. Now you're in retreat. You're sitting there looking at your life, looking at who you are. You have this power to get jealous. That other people's haves make you feel bad. Do you want to carry on like that? All your life and your next life and the life afterwards? Because there are lots of haves. That's karma. People have success. People have intelligence. They have skills. They have friends. They have wealth. They have successful relationships. It's endless. Are you going to be upset every time you come across one of those? When it gets close to home, close to you, that's not what we want. So it's very similar to the next meditation that's coming. We kind of put ourselves in their place. We think, oh, George has got a motorbike. I've only got a bicycle. He's got a motorbike, not just a motorbike, BMW, motorbike. They're really nice. That's not the motorbike, that's me growling because George has got a motorbike and I've only got a bicycle like this. And so I don't feel good. And then we start thinking, George has got a motorbike. Wow, George always wanted a motorbike. Wonderful. Isn't that nice? Well, I'm so happy for George. We tell ourselves. And not just a motorbike. Maybe if he earns a bit more, he can get a helicopter. Or maybe, I really hope he practices like Milarepa and he can fly through the sky. And so we let our imagination run wild. So in the end, George is like Milarepa, he's flying through the sky, he's got a helicopter, he's got everything he could ever wish for. And you're training yourself to feel happy about that. And then you come back down, whoop, where did all this start? George has got a motorbike, so what? You've just imagined him with all those things. Motorbike, bicycle. And I got so upset about it. No, you want everything. You think how wonderful it would be if the people I'm jealous of, if they could be even more. And I could feel happy about it. As they get more and more, I feel better and better. Happy for them. Rejoicing in their good karma. Rather than their good karma makes me make bad karma. That's terrible mechanics. If you know about engineering, this is stupid. People get stuff, all the goodies, the list we went through at the beginning of this session. Good health, long life, friends, respect, all those things through their good karma. If their good karma makes your mind poisoned, What horrible mechanism is that? You want to feel poison? No. What do you want to feel? Happy. Okay. So we can be happy about their good karma. Now, the side benefit of this for our karma is that when we rejoice in others' good karma, we also get a karmic benefit. So it's win all round. And jealousy is terrible poison. So we learn, we train, we meditate, we recondition our mind, we make a new habit to be happy with other people's good fortune, and we wish them even more than what they've got, and even more, to ridiculous levels in a worldly sense, but more than anything, we wish them Dharma, and even better Dharma success than ourselves. And may they become Buddha before we do and help us. All these kind of positive thoughts, the remedy for jealousy. If pride is the main mind poison, then we do exchanging with others. So with pride, we look down on others. We feel superior. So we change places with them. And you're them, and in your life, you've got Ken feeling superior, treating you from a higher place. They're not really higher, but they think they're higher. It's an illusion. Pride's an illusion. And somebody's looking down at you, only half listening to you, not taking you seriously, or feeling so much better in other ways. We change places with them and feel what it's like. Often, for instance, in families with siblings, or in work situations, you've got so many invisible power structures. It's happening all the time in every house. You go into any household, open the door, if you could go in as an invisible observer, the power of between father, mother, children, older brothers, younger brothers, the younger brother, but the younger brother's developed a really strong personality because he's a younger brother and he needs to become stronger and more powerful than the older brother. All that stuff is going on in every house, in every workplace. And it goes on inside monasteries as well and in Dharma centers. Pride, arrogance, feeling of superiority. So you put yourself in the other's place. And I see Ken through the other person's eyes. What's it like? I remember in Spain, when I started going to a Spanish Barcelona center, and after the second visit, I think it was, somebody said, "Ken, you are quite nice." I said, "What do you mean?" "Well, I always saw you as this grey person, walking around Samueling superior with a big bunch of keys on your belt. But actually, you're quite nice." So, I suppose, because I had, how can you say, Akon Rinpoche did place me in an important position quite early on. So I suppose I was arrogant, proud about it. And that's how people saw me. So for me, it was a shock. I always thought I'm always nice. But this person was telling me, "Oh, you're nice." Surprise. you're not the sort of assistant administrator of Sameling or something like that. So we really do that to see how ridiculous pride is, because then we compare ourselves with Buddha. Do I need to say any more? You're there in retreat, alone with your mind, no one else to blame your mind on. That's your mind. What's your mind compared to Buddha's mind, compared to your guru's mind? compared to Karmapa's mind, Taisitpa's mind. So until we're Buddha, none of us have got anything to be too proud of. We're all on the path, brothers, sisters, together, same, very same. And in Maitreya's teachings, he says, why have I taught Buddha nature? It's so that Dharma practices avoid arrogance, because we are all Buddhas naturally. We are simply all becoming what we truly are. And until we're there, then we're all the same. So pride, so we've got one more to go, which is ignorance. We'll come back to that next time. But if ignorance is difficult. We talked about this in the chat before the recording, when we were just meeting up. We don't know how ignorant we are. We don't. That's what ignorance means. We don't know. How can you know what you don't know? It doesn't work. If you don't know it, you don't know it. Knowing what you don't know has to be on the edges of what we know, and we realize there's more to be known. Okay, there's that. But then all the things you don't know, you just simply don't know. So our own ignorance is a hard one to spot. But usually here, when we're talking about ignorance as a mind poison, we're talking about dullness. When we realize it takes us a long time to understand, we're slow learners. That kind of ignorance more than anything else. And so there, the classic answer is we meditate on the 12 links of interdependence. That sounds quite funny. What you recommend the dullest people to do is the most complicated study, 12 links of interdependence. But it's the answer, to sharpen up our mind. So this is kind of different from the others, the ignorance. We need to study, we need to think, we need to keep working at it. So we'll come back to that next time, next session. But in the meantime, you might want to, as a kind of a general introduction to the topic, you might want to read the 17th Karmapa's writing on interconnectedness. There's a book. I think it might be called Interconnected or something like that. But he talks in very simple terms about how we are all interconnected. If we understand interconnectedness, we understand voidness. They're not two topics. It's exactly the same topic. So interdependence is in two areas. We could call them time and space. The main topic of interconnectedness, as the Karmapa teaches, is in space just now. Just now, for this talk, we are connected, otherwise you can't hear me. And all the interconnections, me having listened to Dharma, how that was taught, how I received it, the material thing of Zoom, and then you and everything you know, so that my language, my words make sense to you, some sort of a sense, and so on. How each thing is connected and because of something else. If we understand that, we understand voidness. It's the same topic, exactly the same topic. So we start with interconnectedness. That's just now how things depend on each other. But then through time, that's where we study karma, cause and effect. How we are today, what we are today, is because of yesterday and last year and last life. And what we're doing today will make tomorrow and next year and next life. We look at that. So the 12 links of interdependence are a simple structure whereby we start to understand karma, interconnectedness. Well, thank you very much. We need to stop there. I've talked a lot. May whatever virtue was created by this session contribute to the state of omniscience being attained. By the main enemy, our mind's defilements being completely defeated. Through that, may each and every sentient being become freed from the ocean of existence, troubled by the waves of rebirth, aging, sickness, and death. May this precious bodhicitta arise in those in whom it's not arisen. May its development know no setbacks, and may it increase ever more and more. Through this virtue, may we quickly achieve Mahamudra and establish every single sentient being in that same accomplishment. So thank you very much. That's another session we got through one way or another. And
Ken, last week I asked a question about the 5 stages of the path and the Shravaka potential within that.
yes.
I had a remainder question. As far as I understood it, if you follow the Hinayana path, then you can't attain the 5th stage, which is Buddhahood, surely.
No, for them, the 5th stage is arhatship.
Oh, okay. I see.
As far as they're concerned, Buddha taught us how to become free from suffering. That's the main thing. Someone who is completely free from suffering, and the causes of suffering is an arhat.
Yeah, okay.
And then everything you need to do to get to that stage, which is under the general heading of study, but their study includes practice, meditation practice, and Dharma study, takes you to that freedom. When we look at what that freedom is, it's total absorption in peace. So then there's no more work to do, there's no more study to do. So the name of the 5th stage is actually no more practice or no more study.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
Hi, Ken. Strange question maybe, but have you ever considered organizing a retreat in France?
No.
That's short and sweet.
It's a strange karmic story, let's say. In the very early years of Samiling, one of Akon Rinpoche's personal sponsors was a lady who had a factory in Paris. And she wanted to make it, she was quite left-wing, she wanted to make it an ideal factory where all of the workers would also study Buddhism and meditation practice would be part of the daily work. And so sometime around 1974 or 75, Akon Rinpoche voiced the idea that Katya and I would go to Paris and be based in her factory, and that would start to be the beginning of some activity for the Kamakaju in Paris. So that was very early on. Fortunately for us, that didn't work out. And but we had quite a few friends, French people, who were coming to Samiling because Samiling was the first main place. There was a small group in Paris already, but not much, with Dakpo Rinpoche. And so we had quite a few French friends. And then Kala Rinpoche came 1973, 75. And we were busy with him. And then, to cut a long story short, he set up the first long retreat in Europe at the, when was it? End of the 70s or beginning of the 80s. And we were lined up to do that. We got the money, got the training, and leave Samiling to spend 3 years, 3 months in Burgundy, where he found a place to make a center. And so we're all there and learning how to wear robes and put on the Zen, the upper robe, and everything seemed okay. And then at the last minute, 2 things happened. One is that 2 of his India students, who were Canadians, turned up and said, we really, really want to do the retreat, but it was full. So he called us in, and Akon Rinpoche was there at the time, and he said, I know you're all set up to do the retreat, but these people are all disciples of mine. Would you really mind very, very much giving your places to them? So this mind that was ready to go into retreat was all of a sudden out of retreat again. They had our places. But then the people doing the retreat, they're organizing it, the French people, argued with Akon Rinpoche because they said, oh, we can do this on a budget. We only need to charge each person so many francs or pounds, whatever. We can buy sacks of brown rice. We can do this. They'd done a costing which was really unrealistic, so that they'd all pay less. Have a karmic connection with the French Sangha at present. And he said, I think it's much better to leave them with Kala Rinpoche and see how they get on. And so both my retreat was cancelled there. It was the first of 3 retreats I had cancelled at the last minute. And then also kind of there was a Samiling, Kala Rinpoche's French disciples, a bit of disharmony, let's say. So since then, I've had a very wonderful relationship with France, live in France, and I get invitations to go to some of our local French centers, but quite honestly, the time I'm here is catch-up time, and I don't have time for any more organized Dharma activity. I'm preparing for my other Dharma activity, doing personal stuff and so on. So never a retreat in France, and then because before the way my life was, then there were retreats in Samiling, there were retreats in Africa, had some lovely retreats in South Africa, Zimbabwe, sure.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Chris.
Ken, I just had it's a little practical thing I just wanted to share in case it's of use to anybody, but thinking back to the meditation on your mother, a thing that I actually did it first for my father, and the message, I think, got to him literally just before he died, thanks to my sister. But I had a sort of inspirational waking up in the early hours of the morning to just write down a kind of thank you letter for like all the things I learned from my father. And I did the same thing a few years later. My mother's still alive. I decided to do the same thing a few years later for my mother and wrote her a letter on her birthday, just listing all the things that I'd learned from her, like all the things you mentioned, plus more. Because I just felt it was important to try and say that while she was alive, and just so that it's so that I know that I've said it, and I felt that's been immensely helpful. Also in helping me to straighten out a few difficulties I had in my relationship with my mother as well. And that's been particularly important now that she's her health is not good, and I have to go and travel quite a long way to go and help her from time to time. So so just passing that on in case it's of use to anybody else.
Oh yeah, thank you.
And I also did the same actually for my sister. I've written her a letter on the same lines because I thought let's get this done while people can understand it and while we're all still alive, and then there's fewer regrets at the end.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Yes.
Yeah. I'd like to ask Chris. Did your mother say anything about things that you had left out?
No, she didn't. I think she was, from what I was living far away at that point anyway, so I didn't see her immediate reaction, but she was, I think, was quite moved by it. And it was quite a long list. As was the list for my father, because it was one of those weird things that it was literally, as it turned out, it was probably about 8 to 10 hours before he actually died. I was in the Midlands and he was a few hours drive away. And I'd had a warning from my sister that he was probably on the way out. And I literally woke up at about 3 o'clock in the morning with this sudden clarity of mind about the whole thing, and about thinking of all the things that I'd learned from him especially as a child. So I just started writing them down, and I emailed it straight off to my sister at that time and said, could you print this off and read it out to him? And as it turned out, she was able to read it to him literally as he was drawing his last few breaths, and it was unclear whether he was really conscious even, but from his reaction, she said that she thinks he was, and it was literally then that he just breathed out, and that was it. So that was quite not strange, but it was that's powerful, and that stayed with me. So yeah, I hope it's helpful to people.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. And like I said, today was not instruction in how to do that meditation, because you need more. It was just us seeing what people do, and this is mainly what they do. But there are people who've had terrible relationships with their parents or with their mother, and it's very upsetting for them when they hear Tibetan Lamas say, think of your dear old mother. And for them, sometimes the mother's been the most cruel person ever to them in their life. And I've known a couple of people like this, unimaginable, because the mother's really resented the child being born, having them in their life, and so on. And so it's not obligatory. The idea is you find somebody that you can feel love for. The main thing is to give rise to this feeling of love. Of course, there are lovers or past lovers, but usually that kind of relationship is, how can you say, it's more complicated. It's where there's love through gratitude. It says it's best, but anywhere we can find love, quite honestly, is wonderful. And it's a sad thing, isn't it, that we human beings, we don't get to experience a lot of love in our lives, like really heart-moving love. So those, whatever we can find it's useful, because it's not, this one of the points I wanted to make about this, it's conceptual love is one thing, where we can love and care for all sentient beings. I think the idea is easily acceptable. I think otherwise you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be connected with Dharma and Buddhist teachings if you didn't somehow deep within you feel a natural care for all sentient beings and a love for them. So to send love to beings, to have loving care for everyone as an idea is not too difficult. It can have its difficulties, and when we do the forbearance teachings, we can talk through those. If I know, how can you love the monsters who do terrible things to wars and soldiers, and who hurt children, and rapists and things like this, of course. But working with the ideas, you can do that with logic, you can do that with common sense, in all sorts of ways. But what we're dealing with in the loving kindness meditation is much more raw. It's sensorial. It's the feeling of love that comes from your heart center, where you are moved and you care for people, where you would die for somebody, for people. I can remember telling people after they'd had the Buddha nature pointing out experience from Taisitupa. He was there in India with them. And of course, it's the most precious experience of somebody's whole life when Buddha mind is pointed out to them. And he said, now, of course, you feel great gratitude to Taisitupa, but he said, for each other, as Dharma brothers and sisters who've had this experience together, at the same time, not as a group, it was one by one, but they've been going through 6 years training together, and they were all there together. He said, you should feel closer to your Dharma brothers and sisters, in fact, Vajra brothers and sisters, than to your family, to anybody else, and you should be ready to die for each other, to care for each other for that point, because you carry something that's the most precious experience on earth. But that kind of feeling, I remember when he said it to them, it was had such an impact. They kind of looked at each other with different eyes. They're kind of guardians of an experience. But that feeling of, I would die for you. I'd rather die that you can be happy, that you can be alive. It's really how it feels. And it's that kind of a feeling we're trying to find, and then we're trying to work with and keep it alive and authentic and genuine to share with others, and to the point where we can share it with those we resent. It's a huge work. I mean, it's not just a little thing we can do as a beginner's meditation before we go to something else. If you can do that, you're well on the way to enlightenment. It's a lifetime's work.
Thank you, Ken.
You're welcome. That's it then for today. There is this silence clock which says we've come to the end. So thank you all very much. And next week we're still in with this topic. And yeah, so see you then. Okay, be well. Lots of love to you, and hello and goodbye to those I didn't greet at the beginning.
Cheers, Ken. Thanks very much.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Ken. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ken.